If you want to be a CEO and you're a CFO, my advice is you got to believe you're going to be a CEO. You got to back yourself and you got to start thinking, how do CEOs think, manage? You got to start studying your CEO, why he or she is successful, but also feel free to actually study would you have done things differently. I really think you can become a study of the CEOs you're around.
Thank you for listening to the podcast thus far. The one favor I would ask, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, is to press the follow and subscribe button on whatever media platform you listen to us, as it helps us grow our network and grow the podcast. So thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to Alchemy Uncensored. We're on our third season, and we promise you that we'll bring in more valuable insights into the financial and tax sector of the UAE. Today, we've got John Nolan. John is a seasoned business leader with over 25 years of experience in the Middle East. He began his career with PwC Dublin, rising to audit manager before moving to Saudi Arabia in 2001 to join Al Maraya, where he became the deputy finance director. He then joined Transguard Group in Dubai as group CFO, where he transformed the finance function and back office, laying the foundation for major growth. Promoted to group CEO, he built high-performance teams and reshaped the culture, scaling the business from 10,000 to 44,000 employees and tripling turnover. He went on to lead Initial Saudi Group as Group CEO and launched a major FM joint venture between a leading European firm and a prominent Saudi family group. Today, John is a partner and CEO of EasyTruck, Dubai's #1 moving and storage company, now expanding into Abu Dhabi and across the GCC. He also serves as a non-executive director and as a chair with Vistage, the world's leading CEO peer advisory organization. In addition, John provides advisory, mentoring, and coaching support to CEOs across the region. John's passion is developing high-performing individuals, teams, and organizations, helping them reach their full potential to transform themselves and scale their businesses. So, John, I've just given you a bit of an introduction there. So if you can give our listeners a bit of a background on yourself, your story, where you're at now, and we can go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Conor. Yeah, so look, I trained in PwC in Dublin. I had 7 great years there, worked myself up to audit manager, and then decided to come to the Middle East. Took a job in Saudi, in Al Maraya, which is a lot of people in the Middle East know is one of the most successful companies in the Middle East. And like a lot of expats, plan was a couple of years, save up for a deposit to get on the property ladder in Ireland. So ended up staying 6 years, got the bug for the region, enjoy the challenge and the opportunities that the region gives you. And had 6 great years in Al Maraya. It was a great company to work for. Saudi at the time was a little bit hardship posting, but to be honest, it was really 6 enjoyable years. Then after that, didn't know where to go when I was leaving Saudi. So
where in Saudi were you? Where are you based?
It was in Riyadh.
Riyadh, yeah.
It was in Riyadh, but the role had me traveling around the region a lot. So I had great opportunities in the finance team and really got exposed to projects and work and even roles that were, wouldn't have got if I hadn't come to this part of the world. So I knew Dubai well and figured I'll just go to Dubai. I don't have to make a tough decision of where else to move, whether to move back to Ireland afterwards or elsewhere. And got a lucky break. The main shareholder of Transguard Group, who brought me in to be the group CFO. Transguard, he'd had a lot of success growing the company, but the back office hadn't been invested in during that growth. So my role was really to bring the finance function to a fit-for-purpose state for the growth the company had experienced and to prepare it for further growth. And that evolved into really helping him set the company up for major growth. My role then evolved into being a group CEO from there, and had great successes in that role. I got lucky in that had a bit of a purple patch in the economy for 3 or 4 years while I was in that role, and learned how to be a CEO. Grew the business threefold and grew the headcount, from 10,000 to 44,000, and had a great experience with that. After that, I took a role in Saudi, back to Saudi, with a family group that had businesses in manpower, facilities management, security, etc., and helped that business as well to make some transformations and set it up for success. managed that through the COVID crisis, which was very, very challenging. Looking back on it, was a great experience, but was definitely one of the biggest challenges of my life. Managing, first and foremost, looking after the health of the 20,000 employees who were blue collar workers, and also managing it through the liquidity, cash flow crisis that all companies had in that phase. After that, I got involved with a startup between a large facilities management business from Europe and a large local family. And I just helped that business to structure itself, set up the right team, right processes. And after that, I decided I wanted to come back to Dubai. And I had been group CEO level for about 12 years at that stage. So decided I would go, different direction.
Yeah.
Jumped into an SME, which I became a partner in, took on the role of CEO, but much more hands-on, smaller business, easy truck, moving and storage. And I've been running that for the last 3 years.
See you guys driving around. Good marketing these days. A lot of trucks on the road.
Yeah, look, it's a great business. I knew the business very well. It was at my friend's business, and then he invited me to come in with him. And I knew it had a lot of potential. And I just felt like a different challenge after being in the corporate world for so long. Felt like going into a more hands-on role.
Choose your poison.
Yeah. And I, as you know, I do some advisory work as well, non-exec work, and I enjoy mentoring, coaching CEOs as well.
And just take me back in here, John, because it's a very interesting journey, going from PwC in Dublin. What was the light bulb moment? Because it's tough enough to get people. Saudi's becoming a lot more attractive these days, I think, for expats. But what was going through your head? What was the dream to go to Saudi all those years ago? That's how many years ago was that? If you don't want me asking.
25 years.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
So what was the pull in Saudi back then?
It was literally opening the Sunday Business Post one Sunday and seeing a job in Saudi and going. I had actually done a couple of interviews to go to the likes of the Cayman Islands. That was financial services, and I wasn't really drawn to financial services. I wanted to be more involved in an industry, tangible type thing. And luckily, my cousin had been a nurse in Saudi.
Okay.
So I rang her, and she said, "Well, first of all, that's probably the best company to work for in Saudi for expats. They look after expats incredibly well." And she just told me what she told me about Saudi made sense. She said, "Look, it's a great lifestyle for expats," and it was, right. I guess I was ambitious in my career, and people were saying, "Look, you'll get exposed." And the person who recruited me, who was the CFO of Al Marai, had said, "You're going to get exposed. You're going to get opportunities to work on much bigger, much more sophisticated work than you would normally get in Ireland." Right. So that was.
But again, it comes back to the point, because many people we have on the show, before they get to Dubai, they've went a different path. And obviously, of course you were closer to Dubai, but you took what would have been seen to be a very risky move, back then. Obviously you were fortunate that you had a network that was sort of on the ground that gave you a bit of advice on that. So I guess, what we want to, start off by is talking about, in your time leading some of the region's most recognized organizations, what have you found are the key ingredients to building high performance teams?
Look, it's a great question. I got the opportunity to, take on management roles and get more senior scope in those roles earlier because I went to Al Marai. So I learned quickly what worked and what didn't work. I realized one of the light bulb moments was that if I'm going to fix all the problems, I'm only going to incrementally improve things. But if I can get my team to actually improve in quality and be capable of actually fixing problems, so I can raise the quality, the productivity and of each person in the team by 10, 20, 30%, I'm going to transform everything. And I quickly realized I had a bit of a knack for developing people and motivating people, rewarding people. And frankly, I realized that my career would fast track if I could grow people under me. I also had a realization that I need to make my boss's job easier, right? Yeah. The more you can actually take on some of the work that your boss is doing, the more that he will move up in the organization, and eventually you inevitably get pulled up with that. So that would be, a big insight that I realize I've kept that with me all the time, that really make your boss's life as easy as possible, because that will give him scope to actually operate at a higher, more strategic level, and it puts him in a better perspective from his bosses, but also I pass that on to everyone below me. If everybody's actually whatever
page.
your boss is asking you to do is really ultimately the objective of what your work should be. And if you can really deliver for whoever you're reporting to and above expectations, you're inevitably going to, your boss's scope of work is becoming more strategic, and you inevitably will then end up getting promoted, getting opportunities, get rewarded.
As you said, she did 6 years in Saudi. Then you ended up coming back across to Dubai, and you had did you know how did you meet the Transguard, the CEO in Transguard?
Well, it's a funny one, really. I actually did know one of the management team in Transguard, who was one of the founding team. But I actually saw the ad also on a job portal or somewhere. For the CFO role, group CFO role. I rang my friend, and I said, "You never told me you were looking for a role." And he goes, "I didn't think you'd be interested in this." And I was. I mean, I didn't know much about Transguard when I saw the job opportunity. But once I met the CEO at the time, I was very interested because I knew it was a role I could. It was an exciting role, a really good fit culturally with what they wanted to do. And I realized they wanted transformation. I felt I could do it. And it was a big challenge, and I bet
it was,
I fell for the challenge,
so it was 7 years. You would have been 6 years post-qualified, probably a bit more than that from...
Yeah.
So it's a big jump in a move. So obviously, as you said, about the exposure you got in Saudi, you're probably well ahead of your peer group and what, you were doing in the roles. And that's, I guess, what the CFO in Saudi told you was that, you're going to get exposed to a lot of big ticket items. So kept you moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the Transguard at the time was going through massive growth. But it's finance. The CEO, who was the main shareholder at the time, had invested massively in the sales and operations, but had not invested in the back office.
Classic UAE story.
So there was new shareholders coming in that were Emirates Group, and they were like, "You got to sort the finance function out." So having the PwC experience was great as well, because I having audited a lot of different companies in Ireland, I knew what a good finance function looked like.
Yeah.
So, and I knew that the secret to creating that good finance function was going to be getting the right team in.
Yeah.
So probably the biggest challenge I had initially in joining Transguard was convincing the CEO to give me the funding to build a team, educating him. Because he was like, "Well, I brought you in to fix it." I said, "Well, I need a lot more money to do that." And I said, "But I guarantee you, in a year, it's going to be a lot better. And if it's not, then you can hold me accountable."
But the thing that we go back for our listeners is that obviously a lot of job seekers, this is case in point that your network is the value because you had a contact inside the company. You seen the job advert, you rang your mate, and you said, "Hey, can you help nudge this along?" And I guess that probably did help. So. Again, for people who are listening, that's why networking, building your market, your network is so important. And that hasn't changed now compared to 19 years ago, I guess, 18 years ago when you're probably in that position. So what I want to sort of touch on now, because we have a lot of younger listeners, like newly qualified accountants. So, what advice would you give, newly qualified finance leaders, who are ambitious but unsure how to truly lead?
It's a good question. So if you find yourself in a leadership role, which inevitably most accountants will, because by the nature of the business, you will be getting promotions until suddenly you're in a role which is not going to be successful just by your actions. It's going to be successful by your management and leadership actions. I would say the first thing you need to do is for the team is create the vision of what you are looking to achieve. Really visualize and explain what you want the finance function to look like in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, right? And sell it to them and explain to it what's in it for them, okay? Which is career growth, the good feeling of actually being part of something successful, making finance a critical part of the success of the business. Now, repeatedly communicating that becomes critical because your team, and telling your team that when we get there, I will consider you to have been successful and you get rewarded, right? Then it's getting the right people.
That's the toughest part.
It's getting the right people. Often half of that, a number of people will be there already. Sometimes they're in the wrong role. Sometimes there's good people that are not motivated. Depends if you've just taken over a new role or if it's a role you're in. But inevitably, you said when they find themselves in a leadership role. So I'd look around the team. I'd talk to the individuals and try to understand what their motivations are, and figure out what you think they're going to be good at. Some people are demotivated because they've been managed poorly before you, and they've lost the incentive to work hard, but they've actually got great potential. And sometimes even people's behaviors are bad because they picked up on the politics of the business and it's been a bit toxic. But actually, you can sit there and say, look, I know you've got great potential, but you've got to change your behavior. And then identify who should go where, but then identify the gaps and look externally for them. I can only speak from my experience, but the secret to my success has always been about creating high-performance teams. In fact, it's even before that, high-performing individuals. And I've got a saying is you don't create high-performance teams or companies. You create high-performance people. High-performance people create high-performance teams and companies, right? So I would, I personally used, and still do to this day, I'm hands-on on recruitment. And I will, and you actually know because you've helped me recently with bringing in my senior finance role into EasyTrack. And I'm probably one of those more higher maintenance clients for you because I took my time. I took my time and I actually literally also allowed myself time to reflect over a couple of months.
Yeah, we got there.
If this was the right fit. But to me, some of the biggest decisions you're going to make are on recruitment and on the people in your team. And then once they're there, I think you've got to explain to them the type of behaviors you want in the team dynamic. I'm a big, I use analogies of sport all the time, and I'm a suffering Man United fan these days, but I always refer
back, of them about.
But I always refer back to Alex Ferguson, who to me was one of the greatest man managers that I've ever seen. And, you got to take out any toxic behaviors out of the team. You've got to explain to everyone the team is more important than the individual, and you've got to lead from the front and demonstrate the type of behaviors and reward. By reward, I mean more commend people for good behaviors and tackle them straight away for bad behaviors. Get that team dynamic working really, really hard and push people, stretch them. Some people are ambitious and you can push them more. Others, are quite happy where they are, but learn
everybody has a place.
Learn what everybody really wants and really get that team dynamic flowing. And work hard on the team.
Because a toxic thing, as I say, a great line I heard was a hole is better than an asshole. And, having, because obviously the nature of the position I'm in, that, when people are looking to, especially get rid of a few clients where there's someone in the team that's just bringing everyone down. And as you said, it demotivates someone. And if someone's not managed properly, or as you said, there is great potential, but it's just getting that potential out of someone. So,
yeah, well, like on that point, I do think one bad apple in a team can create a really toxic culture across the whole team. So it's often in business, we avoid the hardest things to tackle. But actually, when it comes to team dynamic and individuals, you might actually have someone who's doing a good job technically, but has a really bad personality. Yeah. I've managed them out. But I've also turned people like that around by actually just being very honest with them and going, I know you're good, but your behavior is not acceptable. And if you don't change, you're going to manage yourself out. Because I also, I don't think you should feel that sorry for people who you have to manage out like that, because you just say to them, look, you've managed yourself out because your behavior is just not conducive to working in here. But give them an opportunity to change. But then if they don't, you got to move them on.
Fool me once, as I say. So, and then the area now, I'm actually very excited because I think you're the first guest we have had that has actually done the switch from CFO to CEO. And of course, CFO of massive companies. So it's not like a small business. You've been right at the top, one of the biggest organizations in the region. So when I'm speaking to senior guys, that's the next thing, especially guys who've been CFOs for 10, 15 years. I say, hey, how do I make the move to COO or CEO? And, quite keen just to understand how you did it, I guess. What's the magic formula? I think from what you're saying so far, you're obviously a very good team manager, good motivator, operationally very solid. But yeah, keen to understand the secret sauce. I know you're going to say there's an element of luck involved, but I think you create your own luck in these things.
Look, there is an element of luck or opportunity. And and in your career and in life, you get opportunities that come along, and if you don't grab them, they'll pass you by quickly. So you got to spot the opportunities, and you got to grab them. I think the first thing you need to realize is, do you really want to be a CEO, or do you want to be a career CFO? And some people are going to be much more successful and happier being career CFOs and just becoming better and better and better at that, and maybe helping their organization succeed at that, or moving into bigger roles. And others are made, have the right makeup for a CEO role. If you want to be a CEO and you're a CFO, my advice is, you gotta believe you're going to be a CEO. You got to back yourself, and you got to start thinking, how do CEOs think, manage? You got to start studying your CEO, why he or she is successful, but also feel free to actually study would you have done things differently. I really think you can become a study of the CEOs you're around. There's plenty of good CEOs that are now in the social media world. You can study some of the best CEOs. Jeff Bezos, people like that. He's probably my one of the CEOs that I know is like one of the biggest company, one of the biggest companies in the world. But I read about certain things he does, and he's a visionary, and he's someone I look up to. But I think you need to study CEOs, and you start thinking what your style would be and what you'd be like as a CEO. And secondly, then you almost got to manifest yourself into the position. And feel free, even as a CFO, to start supporting the CEO that you're working for without asking him, but just start supporting him and offering to do some more of his tasks.
As you said, it's
broader
trying to make
tasks.
his life, yeah.
Yes, outside of finance. Get exposure. What happened to me is my CEO, I did start doing that. I started basically taking on more and more work that was not CFO work. I pretty much was running most of the back office. And then I started supporting with operations and sales as well. So inevitably, I was slowly almost doing the role before I got the actual title. Yeah. And trust me, any CEO that you're going to help and take off, start helping them and doing broader work than the CFO, they're going to appreciate it. So if you really, want to do that, that's what I would do. And maybe, but start manifesting it, start practicing it.
And even from a mindset point of view, if you were to circle back a few years, like what was the thing that kept you up at night as a CFO versus a CEO? Was there, did you have to change your emotions within the business?
Massively.
Okay, yeah.
Massively. Look, as a CFO, you're just one cog in the wheel. It's one dimensional. Your job I believe, is to help the CEO sleep at night. Yeah. I think a good CFO allows the CEO to focus on running the business and not be stressed about the business going to run out of cash. Are the performance metrics that are being reported accurate? I think a really good CFO really helps a CEO sleep at night. And you're a bit risk averse. It's your job to actually protect the CEO. So you're highlighting things.
Yeah, you're saying no a lot. Yes,
you're saying no a lot. You're the gatekeeper. Yeah. And you get overruled a lot, and you respect that because you feel like you're doing your job, but the CEO has to balance things up. When you become a CEO, or when you start thinking about becoming a CEO, you have to realize, which was a challenge for me. A lot of when you're in finance, and especially if you've sort of been brought through the ranks, like PwC or something like that, you almost think that the finance function is the most important part of the business, right? Yeah. And to be honest with you, it is at certain stages. I mean, in a financial liquidity crisis, finance almost, the CEO and the CFO will almost be spending 50% of the time with each other to get through that. And that was me during the global financial crisis. And finance was, in a large way, running TransGuard for a couple of years. But after the business came out of the global financial crisis, it wasn't right for finance to be so dominant then. Sales and operations and customer and even HR, which are focused on employees, should be just as important, and some would argue even more important. So I would, you have to get out of that mindset of thinking finance is being finance-centric and really understand the value to a CEO of the other parts of the business.
And I guess a point and I'm speaking to a lot of the guests, especially some of the guests we've spoken to recently. The word I'm getting from the CFO is that, it's actually all about being able to business partner, build the relationships with the wider business. And, you're a very good speaker, very confident person. But do you think for you personally that the fact that, you're quite outgoing, you can go over to the sales guys, and was it the fact that you actually built relationships with the wider business that made the transition for you to be CEO? Because as you said, if there's a CFO and all he or she cares about is finance, then of course the rest of the cogs of the business are not going to respect that person maybe as much as someone who's building relationships.
I mean, don't get me wrong. In certain stages,
there's nothing perfect. I know that.
At a certain stage, as being of my career as a CFO, I wouldn't say the most popular person in the management team.
Yeah.
Because
I don't think the CFO ever is much.
That's just, and I'm being kind to myself there, probably. Yeah. But I think, look, I did about 6 years in Toastmasters, so. Yeah, I wasn't all thank you for saying I'm a good communicator, but I wasn't always a confident speaker. I realized that speaking in front of large crowds and even speaking around meetings was a skill that I wanted to develop and felt like it was critical for success. So I went to Toastmasters for 6 years. And relationships are key. And what I learned the hard way, I got a 360 review back in my early 30s, which pretty much said, John doesn't see the perspective of another person. He only sees his perspective. And that was a real wake-up call for me. So then I started I think later on, I started realizing that the salesperson, the HR person, the ops person has a completely different perspective than finance. And I have to, at the very least, I have to learn to listen to them. But honestly, if I'm going to really grow, I probably have to empathize with them and understand from their perspective why certain things are important to them and try and compromise.
I think it's emotional intelligence. That seems to be the hot word these days, is all about, as you said, understanding how someone else is perceiving the situation.
And as you get older, you get more life experience. As you grow as a leader, you do become more empathetic and you become emotionally intelligent, right? And that's definitely something I wouldn't have had a huge amounts of early on, and I've become much, much better. And you have to understand, everybody is ultimately driven by their egos. Yeah. So even when you're managing and communicating or influencing or different decisions, it's important to try to do it in a way where it's not, disrespecting someone's ego. So there is a way of presenting and influencing in a positive way. Even as a CEO, you've got to overrule a lot of people. And as a CFO, right? So I'd always sit there and say, look, I really respect and understand why you want that and why you disagree with me. But I've got to weigh things up and do what's best for the business, not necessarily just what's best for your area. And in my opinion, this is what's best for the business. But I respect and understand why you want that, but I've got to go this way. And I hope I need you to back me. Much different than just overruling someone and making them feel, upsetting their ego. So I think that's a huge thing, is learning how to influence people in a constructive way.
Yeah. And then, closing on the CEO piece, like for you now, do you think all finance leaders should aspire to be CEOs, or do you think, some guys, as you sort of made the point earlier on, that some guys are going to be a lot happier if they just stick in the CFO lane?
This is a super question, by the way, because I think a lot of CFOs will have this dilemma, and I have recommended to really good CFOs who've had an opportunity to join a business as a CEO, but they've also had an opportunity to go to another business in a much more senior CFO role than they're in. And I've recommended, you're asking for my advice, I think you should take the CFO role. I said, you've got all the potential to be an exceptional CFO and rise right to the top and be one of the best in the region. And I said, look, you got to understand that the compromise or the trade-off if you go to CEO role is, are you really up for, do you have the appetite for what it takes?
Yeah.
My experience is you're taking on 4 or 5 times more pressure. You don't have the same job security.
You're getting hit from all angles, I guess, every day.
But you don't get 4 or 5 times the salary, right? So everyone's sitting there going, the CEO's been paid the most.
Yeah.
but the proportional amount of extra pressure, and he's in the firing line. He's suddenly on the front line with the shareholders, the board. It's not for everyone, the type of pressure. And there's a reason why most CEOs in big companies, a bit like myself, have a 10 or 12 year life cycle. Because it takes its toll. And, it's not for everyone. Becoming an exceptional CFO, if you're really, really good at being a CFO, I always felt I was going to be a better CEO than a CFO, right? So and I wanted to be a CEO, so that's why I took it. But I look at other people and I think you're much better in a CFO role, and you're just going to get better and better and better at that. But you're taking a risk going into a CEO role. You mightn't enjoy it. The pressure could be too great. And the job security is not as great. So,
you're first of all, and look, I think a really good point you make there, even for listeners, people who are thinking about it, is that, in your opinion, it's 4 or 5 times the amount of work, but it's not 4 or 5 times the uplift in pay. And the reality is in this region, people move for money. And, just for people to be aware.
I guess it's a little bit like moving from being a football player to a manager. Not everybody, not everyone can do it. When you're a CEO, you are managing every part of the business. When you're the CFO, you're really just keeping your boss, the CEO, happy, and you are managing relationships, but they're your peers.
Yeah. And then if you could pass, 3 leadership principles to the next generation of business leaders, what would they be?
I'll go back to that vision, right? So create the vision. And by the vision, I really mean describe what you'd like the finance function. I assume we're talking about finance leaders here.
Yeah.
The finance function to look like in 12 months, in 2 years, in 3 years.
So a bit of a roadmap.
Roadmap it, describe it, even org structure, how it'll evolve, and constantly talk and brainstorm in the team how you're going to get there. Because you're really making the team accountable for their own success as a team. Really, building team spirit and making the team feel like they're part of a journey that's going to be exciting and rewarding, I would say, is really, really key. Secondly, is Jim Collins wrote a great book, Good to Great, and it was when I first made CEO, it was the first book I read on a recommendation. But one of the things he says is get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus.
Yeah, fair.
Right? So build that team. Trust me, if you have, and you'll never have the perfect team.
Yeah. And just when you think you do, someone will leave the team.
But if you don't have the right team, you're going to find it very hard to have success. And there's, a lot of people talk about culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? If you don't have the right team, you're pushing uphill. The minute you've got to the first thing I would focus on is getting the right team. And by the right team, it's not just the people that are there and bringing new people in. Sometimes you've got to move people around and work a lot on understanding each key team member, building that relationship. And, the studies show that, I think it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs or something like that, whereby money is not the driving factor once you get past a certain level. I mean, yes, it is a factor, but actually how much a manager or a leader appreciates the people that's working for them and actually genuinely cares about them. So, you do need to create strong relationships and understand the human side of who you're managing. And that also means understanding some of their personal life issues as well, and being supportive when they do go through some personal challenges. So getting to know them, and even sometimes when the productivity or the performance dips down, don't immediately jump down to conclusions. Just ask them, is everything okay in your personal life? And sometimes just being there for them through that period will help them work, help you work them out. And I would say the final one is that culture behavior in the team. I mean, it's Alex Ferguson, right? I mean, he just created success after success after success by getting the right culture into his teams. And I'm definitely the type of leader that has had success through the teams and people that I've focused on in every job. Even my current job in Easy Track, I'm very focused on getting the right people in and setting them up for success.
Yeah.
But then the other thing I'd say is you got to reward people as well. One of the biggest challenges I've had in my career is when we have had big success, then if people are doing a job that they're 30% more productive, they're adding 30% more value than the previous year, they deserve a big pay rise.
Yeah.
And this is where the challenge comes in, especially if you've got to get approval from above, which you inevitably always have to. Is trying to sell that, and sometimes you get a lot of pushback.
Of course, yeah.
But the reality is, if your team's performing significantly better, adding much more productivity, then you have to recognize that their value in the market's gone up. And if you don't,
you get left behind. Yeah, look.
If you don't match that, they're going to go, and then you're back to square one. It's not always easy, and I'm sure people who work for me, who are working with me right now, are saying, "Well, he doesn't give us the pay rises we want."
Yeah.
Well, nobody ever gets the pay they really want. But my point is, you have to reward for success, and I feel like it's important to go to the shareholders and stakeholders and say, "Look, we're making more money for the business. You've got to give some of it back to."
Needs to be fair, yeah.
Well,
I said the biggest thing we see is nobody ever calls me saying, "Hey, I love my job. Find me another job." It's one of two things. They're either they want more money, they feel underpaid, or they don't like their boss. That's the two most common things that we get.
Yes,
phone calls on. So I guess, John, I want to touch on, you've obviously done a lot of mentoring for CEOs. You're involved in Vistage, I know firsthand, and just keen to understand, you're a busy enough man as it is. What drew you to this space to be, giving back, so to speak?
I always felt I would do some sort of advisory. I just call it coaching, advisory, mentoring, all in three, because I'm not your typical coach who literally goes and asks questions. I will offer advice and I'll mentor, right? And I feel like I've had definitely 25 years in the region in senior roles. I've learned a heck of a lot on the way. I've learned just as much from some of my setbacks and failings, things that didn't work out, as I did with things that have worked out. And so I always felt I was going to, end up doing that now in some way or another. When I took on the role in Easy Track, I was very clear to my business partner and said, I'm going to do a few things on the side here. I'm not going to leave the corporate world behind. And I've always loved, as you can tell from my answers, I really have enjoyed developing high performance individuals, teams, companies. So I feel like it's just it's not really work for me.
You enjoy it, yeah.
I enjoy it. I didn't enjoy every aspect of being a CEO in corporate world. There's some things that are not necessarily fulfilling, but the hard work. But this was very fulfilling, and seeing so many people that have worked for me in senior roles around the region or back in their home countries now is really fulfilling, because I feel like, okay, I had a bit of an influence on that. And I just feel like I want to give back, and I want to pass on that knowledge and help. I've been successful. So I feel like I can pass on to people the tricks of how pass my success. And, I think success in life, someone once said to me years ago, but people don't read books anymore. The books you read and the people you meet. So I feel like I enjoy that aspect. I love Vistage, putting a bunch of CEOs around a table and diving into their challenges, their opportunities. And part of that is not necessarily me having all the answers, but it's the same sort of skills that I used to create that team spirit and just get people supporting each other.
And then I guess one good closing question we have, which I think is, again, very relevant for, listeners, job seekers. It's the move. You went from not many bigger corporates, 44,000 employees, to SME startup.
Yes.
For someone who's on one side or the other side now, who's thinking about making such a move from a big corporate to an SME, how have you, how did you find that sort of experience, the transition? What were the key things that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, it's definitely been, it's a massive change. You realize how pampered you are from an admin support perspective, and not even admin support. When you're in the CEO role, even sometimes in the CFO role, you really are just running meetings and directing. But the heavy lifting of the job is being done by somebody else, the execution. You go into an SME, you're going back to being very, very hands-on. That can be good or it can be bad. I actually have enjoyed it. But I'm working to grow the business. The admin side was very, very challenging. And sometimes a task that would previously taking you an hour or two could take you a lot longer because you've got nobody to help you. But it is exciting as well to be part of a smaller embryonic type business and grow it. You don't have the politics that you have in the corporate world. So you can just cut, you make decisions and you execute far, far quicker. While in a more bureaucratic corporate world,
approvals.
Talking about stuff for weeks sometimes. It's why startups, especially in tech, can come along and get bigger very, very quickly, and they can disrupt established industries where the bureaucracy is holding back and back them. But I would say, look, I felt after 12 years as CEO, I was ready for a new challenge. The funny thing is, the Easy Track business is growing to a level whereby now it might move on to become a bigger company in a not too different future. And I'll go back to, some of the challenges I'm having now are some of the issues I had in the corporate world.
Well, you're obviously going the right direction then.
Yeah. And I would say in this part of the world, moving from a larger company to a smaller company is probably more of an opportunity because we're in a fast growth part of the world. Yeah. So in other parts of the world, it's really more difficult for SMEs to become big companies. And probably only a few of them do. There's very well established companies that are being very defensive in most sectors. But where we are with the growth that this region has experienced in its GDP, but also in its population growth, there's a lot of startups that are going to become big companies. So, if you are ambitious and you like to maybe be a bit more hands-on, there's plenty of opportunities to get involved in smaller companies and make them over time bigger companies.
Good. Well, I think for any of our listeners that are relocating here, look no further than John. I'm sure he'll give you a discount if you're moving over anytime soon. So John, look, that's been great. We're going to close on a few quick fire questions, just so the audience can get to know you a little bit better. So what's the one thing people will be surprised to know about you?
Oh, I know you're asking the tough questions. Okay, well, maybe not surprised, but people are probably going, he keeps referring to himself being Irish, but his accent is a little bit mixed up. So I actually grew up, I was born in Ireland, lived in Australia for 10 years as a teenager, and went back to Ireland for all my 20s. So I spent 20 of my first 30 years in Ireland. But 10 years in Australia. So I describe myself as Irish Australian.
Yeah, there's a good mixed accent there, right?
Yeah, I love my rugby. And thankfully now I focus more on rugby than I do Irish rugby team in Leinster than Man United, put it that way.
A lot better to support. And then if you weren't in this career, what do you think you'd be doing?
Probably, I love traveling. So if I was to pick the ideal job, I'd love to be involved in travel and sport. I mean, I look at some of the guys that are like in the, support the golf tours, but or travel the world with Formula One, and I go, wow, what a life. So that's probably something that would be a dream job.
I have a good final question for you now. If your life was a movie, what would it be called?
Oh my God. My life has been, it's been quite a varied life, as you can see. Even growing up, I was all over the place. Along the lines of the life of many parts and turns, something like that.
We'll keep an eye out for it. I'm sure it'll be
something strange. Like it has changed a lot. And I do like variety.
So getting around.
So.
Perfect. Well, look, John, on behalf of Alchemy, thank you for coming on today. I think there's lots of golden nuggets, and I look forward to seeing where Easy Truck goes.
Super. Well, thanks for having me. Enjoyed chatting. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. We hope you all enjoyed this episode, and please make sure to subscribe to our podcast, and see you on the next episode.